Well, hello again and welcome to Spurgo's Thought for Your Week. I'm Pastor John from Sun City Church and we continue our journey through the book of Psalms. This week we're looking at Psalms chapter 27 and my thought for your week is, have you talked to God recently? Psalm 27 is a great psalm, and as usual David outlines a scenario where he's surrounded by his enemies, but he describes this situation in terms of feeling secure and confident because he knows that he is safe in his relationship with God. And to me, the whole chapter of Psalm 27 speaks of someone who is secure in an intimate, loving relationship with the Lord, someone who knows that God will never let him down. So I want to look at Psalm 27 and we're going to look at verse 4 to 10 as we explore this together. The one thing I ask of the Lord, the thing that I seek most, is to live in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, delighting in the Lord's perfections and meditating in his temple. For he will conceal me there when trouble comes, and he will hide me in his sanctuary, and he will place me out of reach on a high rock. And then I will hold my head high above my enemies who surround me. At his sanctuary I will offer sacrifices with shouts of joy, singing and praising the Lord with music. Hear me as I pray, O Lord, be merciful and answer me. For my heart has heard you say, come and talk with me. And my heart responds, Lord, I am coming. So do not turn your back on me. Do not reject your servant in anger, for you have always been my helper. Don't leave me now. Don't abandon me, O God of my salvation. For even if my father and mother abandon me, the Lord will hold me close. Now there is one verse in that chapter that I want to really focus on, and that is in verse 8. And it says that my heart has heard you say, come and talk with me, and my heart responds, Lord, I am coming. How many times does the Lord try to speak to us? Tries to get our attention, but we're just simply too busy to spend the time to read his word, to talk to him, to be still and know that he is God. We're just so busy doing things, living life, and we fail to set that time aside with the Lord on a daily basis. Even now, I'd ask you the question, can you hear the voice of the Lord saying, can you spare the time? Come, talk with me. I'm reminded of God calling Adam and Eve after Adam and Eve had sinned and were hiding themselves from God. And it describes that scene in the book of Genesis of God walking through that garden and crying out, Adam, Adam, where are you? That God desired that fellowship, God desired that communication, and yet it was Adam's sin that was separated him. And then we think of his son Cain, who plotted to murder his own brother Abel. And God warned him, and God speaks to him and says, Cain, don't do this. Sin desires to have mastery over your life. But Cain refused to listen to the voice of God. Many years later, we come across the prophet Elijah, who had a time in his life when he was exhausted and broken. And he's out there in the wilderness, and he's hiding in a cave, and there's an earthquake that comes and a violent wind and there's fire. But the scripture says that God wasn't in any of those things. And then there's this still small voice. What are you doing here, Elijah? Because it's in that still small voice that God speaks to us. God desires to have fellowship with us. And I think of the moment when Jesus, on his way ultimately to the cross, stood on a hill overlooking Jerusalem and looked at that city and said these words in Luke chapter 13, verse 34, O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones God's messengers. How often I have wanted to gather your children together as a hen protects her chicks beneath her wings, but you wouldn't let me. And I know in my own life, countless times, many times, when I know that the Lord has wanted to gather me under the covering of his wings, but I've been too busy, too pig-headed, too stubborn. I've been running in the opposite direction, too busy doing things for God that I had no time to spend with him. What is the Lord trying to say to you this week? Have you set aside some time to be with him? As a young man, Samuel served in the temple, and he'd never heard the voice of God until one night when he heard a voice wake him and saying, Samuel. And he heard his name called, and he didn't recognize it as the voice of God until the priest Eli directed him to how to respond. And so I think it was on the third time when Samuel heard the voice, he said, Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. Is the voice of God calling you? Have we set aside some time to be with him and to share our heart with him? Maybe we could say that to the Lord this very day. Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. Isaiah chapter 40, verse 28 to 31 in the Living Bible version says, Don't you yet understand, don't you know by now that the everlasting God, the creator of the farthest parts of the earth, he never grows faint or weary. No one can fathom the depths of his understanding. He gives power to the tired and worn out, and strength to the weak. Even the youth shall be exhausted, and the young men will all give up. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles, and they shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not be faint. So my encouragement to you this week is, if you're feeling overwhelmed, or if you feel you've got a lot of tasks and a lot of jobs to do, that's not a time to neglect spending some alone time with the Lord. It's time actually to spend more time with him. We need his strength. We need his encouragement. We need to spend time with him. He wants to hear your heart, and we need to hear his voice. So when the Lord comes knocking and he says, Come, talk to me, don't put it off till tomorrow. Take some time to talk, to listen, to fellowship with the Lord. May the Lord bless you this week. I hope that was encouraging for you. And until next time, God bless.